ever thought about being a traveling therapist, I bet one of your concerns was worry about whether there's going to be reliable internet wherever you go in the world. As a remote therapist that is seeing their patients or clients all online, the internet is so important. Obviously, as therapists, our work is all about helping people with really sensitive and painful and difficult things. It is a top priority to make sure that when you're a remote therapist, your internet is reliable, that your internet isn't going to go down at a really sensitive, inopportune time. If you ever were to live this type of lifestyle of traveling around the world, you'd want to make sure that it's possible, that it's not going to jeopardize your work with patients. Well, as someone who has been traveling the world as a psychologist for the past year, I'm here to share all of my tips and tricks that I've used to manage my anxiety about the internet. Hi, I'm Dr. Annie, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and a traveling therapist. Over the last year, I have traveled the world and also successfully run my US-based private practice. I'm passionate about helping other therapists figure out how to live this type of lifestyle too. If you're a therapist that has dreamed about living abroad while working as a therapist, then hit like and subscribe as I share all of my wisdom that I've learned along the way so that you can confidently live this lifestyle too. So, over the last year, I have been living and working outside of the United States. I've been working in Morocco for most of it, but I've also lived and worked for a short period of time in Thailand and also Indonesia, more specifically Bali. When I was starting out, or even before I decided to live this type of lifestyle, I was really anxious about whether I was gonna have access to reliable internet. Even before I started living this lifestyle, I would go on Facebook groups asking people who have traveled outside of the United States and worked online, kind of what their experience of the internet was. Were they able to connect to the reliable internet? Like, was it, accessible? And I feel like a lot of the times people would say that they had no issue, and actually the internet in other countries, or the country they were living, was a lot better. And after working outside of the United States for a year, I would say that is partially true, but not completely true. I think anywhere you are in the world, the internet is going to have issues. Like, it's not something that's necessarily like 100% reliable all the time. But in general, like when I was in the United States, I would have issues working, online. My patient's internet would have issues. And I think in the same way, like that happens to me in other countries. All of this to say that if you're gonna base your practice on working with people virtually, Wi-Fi is a big deal, and so figuring out how to manage when the Wi-Fi will be an issue is a really important thing. And it's something that you might even need to do in the United States. It's not just other countries. So to start out, I think a helpful thing to talk about is just basic Wi-Fi education. I use Simple Practice, so I'll use this as a kind of a basis. For Simple Practice, they say online that their video platform works best if you have the internet speed of 10 to 15 Mbps. Now, if you don't know how to get your Wi-Fi speed, all you have to do is type into Google Wi-Fi speed test, and there'll be an automatic speed test at the top of the results. And you'll say run test, and it'll tell you kind of what your Wi-Fi speed is. This is something that I use all the time, and it can just really help you before sessions or when you get to a new location, know what your Wi-Fi speed is. If it's lower than that, you might want to come up with other ideas of what you might need to do if there's internet issues. If you use Zoom, it doesn't require as high of an internet speed, but it can still cause problems if you don't have at least that basic amount. Some other things that affect Wi-Fi speed are the amount of people on the connection. So you could have like 10 to 15, and if there are a bunch of people on that server or using that same Wi-Fi router and they're streaming videos or using video conferencing, that's all going to make the Wi-Fi speed slower for each person. Another one is where your router is compared to your computer. If your router is in the second floor and you're on the first floor, that's obviously potentially going to make your Wi-Fi speed slower on your computer. Also, where your Wi-Fi router is located. I know in the United States, most of the Wi-Fi routers are connected to like a cable that's then connected to like the larger system or whatever. Like here in Morocco, I have like a Wi-Fi router box that just like plugs into the wall. And so it's kind of, it's not accessing some larger grid, and there might be other countries that have that as well. So if you're traveling and the Wi-Fi router box isn't in a great place, like next to a window or not like facing other buildings, if you're having kind of slower speeds, just check that out as a potential way to boost your Wi-Fi. Another one that I actually experienced when I was in the United States is your computer storage, but also outdated software. I used to have like a pretty old Mac computer, and I would have a lot of issues using my computer, so I just switched to my phone. And as soon as I got a new computer and I was doing virtual sessions, like the Wi-Fi issues disappeared. And so if you're someone who is going to work completely online, I would just make sure that you have a good computer that's new, that doesn't have super full storage, that has updated software, because that really could impact your Wi-Fi. Another thing is your connection to a VPN. Here in Morocco, sometimes I will try and use a VPN just to have extra protection or to act like I'm in the United States so that I can access certain websites. But I will say that caused some issues with my computer connecting to the Wi-Fi. And so if you're having issues connecting to your Wi-Fi and you have a VPN, just disconnect the VPN and then connect to the Wi-Fi, and then you can start your VPN again. Also, VPN does require internet, and so if you're having slower speeds, make sure that you're on a private Wi-Fi connection and turn that VPN off, because that can really affect your speed as well. Another one is that obviously your speed package for the Wi-Fi, obviously when you're traveling, you might not have as much control over this, but also the age of the Wi-Fi router. Like one place I was in had supposedly really high speed internet, like up to 200 MBSs, but the Wi-Fi router was really old, and so it was really slow, and so we ended up asking him to get a new router, and he did, and it was great. So that's something to consider or be aware of as well. Another is just that if you have a lot of things running in the background of your computer, sometimes if I'm having Wi-Fi issues, I'll restart my computer just to kind of get a fresh start, and that can help with the Wi-Fi speed. And then the last thing I'll say is that sometimes it's not an issue with your Wi-Fi or your computer. It can actually be an issue with the server or that the website you're using has. I've noticed sometimes when I use Simple Practice, really high traffic times can slow it down, at 9 a.m. on the East Coast. Sometimes I would have issues, and I think sometimes that is just that there's so many people using the server that it can go down. And also the website you're using can just have issues. I use Simple Practice, and I know other therapists have talked about the issues that they can have with Simple Practice. It might not be anything you're doing. It might have an issue with whatever system you're using. That's why I think some people have backups, having Zoom as a backup if, for whatever reason, Simple Practice or whatever EHR you're using is having issues. Sometimes that can help when it's not something that's wrong with your Wi-Fi or your computer. So now I want to share with you some things that you can do to set yourself up for success in case that you do have Wi-Fi issues wherever you go, because it's something that you can't really control. And so having a plan and preparing even before you leave the country. The first thing I would say is I would recommend staying in either an Airbnb or potentially a co-working space that also has a co-living space, because in those places their Wi-Fi is probably going to be better. I have found that the Wi-Fi in hotels is just not very good, and I don't think that they prioritize having good Wi-Fi. And I also, depending on where your room is in the hotel, you could be placed really far from the router, and so it might be better to kind of stay in a more private place that you're going to have more access to the router. But with this, something you can do if you're staying at Airbnb is to contact the Airbnb before you book it and ask them to either share with you what their speed is, and then also, if you really want to be careful, you can ask them to send you a screenshot of what the Wi-Fi speed is. I've never done that. There might have been times that I should have done that, but in general, that is something you can do. Another thing you can do before you leave the United States is try and buy some type of portable hotspot or internet solution. I will go over later what are some options you have with the portable hotspot solutions. But in general, I would say try to buy it when you're in the United States, because depending on where you are, you might not have access to it at like a mall or a store. And if you're moving around, shipping can just be a little bit messy. And so just having kind of like a backup ready before you leave can give you peace of mind at least. Another thing I'll say that you don't necessarily need to do before you leave the United States, but you can do before you book a place or after you book a place, is to make sure there are other options around you. Let's say you stay in an Airbnb, but there's kind of like an issue with the internet. You want to make sure you look up what are other places that you can go to if there's Wi-Fi issues where you are. Like a really great option are co-working spaces. Obviously, you would need to check with the co-working space to make sure they have private Skype booths or Zoom booths, but a lot of them nowadays do. And so just making sure that there are those options around you, and maybe email them and you can ask them kind of how you would go about using those booths or whatever, just so you have a plan. Also, if you're traveling around the United States, you can see if there's certain libraries around you, and maybe even, wherever you're traveling, you can see if there's libraries around that offer private meeting spaces. I would recommend this mainly because you don't always know what's going to happen where you are, and so just having a plan can really give you the peace of mind. And then with that, also, if it's a place that you've never been before, or it's a place that you're not quite sure about, just try and make sure you're staying in a bigger city. Like right now, I'm staying in a little village in Morocco, but I would never stay in a little village the first time I'm ever in a place, because you don't know what's gonna happen. You might not know the area. And so making sure that you're in a place that does have options around you, but also will more likely have better internet access, will be really important. If you're staying in a place for a long time and you feel comfortable, then you can maybe move to a more rural place, but I wouldn't advise it if you're just starting out in this lifestyle, because it can just be more stressful. When you arrive in a place, I would make sure that you arrive at least 1 to 2 days before you're actually supposed to start working. And this is mainly because in case there are Wi-Fi issues, you want to make sure that you have time to test the Wi-Fi speeds at different times of the day, like especially during the times that you're going to be working, and making sure the Wi-Fi is good to go during those times. You also want to give yourself time to make sure you can come up with some plan in case something is wrong with the Wi-Fi. Something I've learned is that if I travel on a day that I'm supposed to be working, it just makes things so much more stressful, and I can end up being way more anxious than I need to be. And so I just learned traveling on the weekend, giving myself 1 to 2 days to settle in and make sure I have time to resolve any issues if I need to, has been a game changer for me. So I definitely recommend it for you. Another tip for when you arrive is that if you're going to another country, you are more than likely going to need a SIM card for internet. I would definitely recommend this if you're going to be in a place longer term. I know there are like some apps online like Aerola that allow you to buy data, but those are usually more expensive. And so if you know you're going to be in a place for at least a month or two, or even honestly like 2 weeks, it is worth buying the SIM card at the airport. It's my recommendation, but obviously you'll be able to find probably other kind of places that you can buy SIM cards outside of the airport, but the airport is just gonna be the easiest place. And when you're buying the SIM card, I would highly recommend getting the SIM card that has the most internet data. This might be the unlimited packages or just like the high data packages. When I was traveling in Asia, in Thailand and Bali, they had unlimited packages that worked great. And I say this because you can use your phone as a backup for internet in case something is wrong with your Wi-Fi. It's more expensive and you might not need it all, but I swear the peace of mind will be really helpful to you in case something goes wrong and you need a backup. That is a great backup. The last thing I'll talk about is the portable internet solutions that you could use while traveling abroad. The first one is probably the most priciest one, but trying to get something like Starlink. Now, Starlink can be used in a lot of different countries and will give you access to really fast Wi-Fi. I've never personally used it, but I know other people who have used it. It is something that I know you can travel around with and that people do use. Like, even if you go on their website, you can see that there's like a roaming option. I think that does make it a little bit more expensive for you, but that could be something that you wouldn't need to rely on whatever country's Wi-Fi. You would have access to the satellite that gives you internet, and so that could be a really great option for you, especially if you are wanting to go to more remote places. That could be a great option. The one thing that I will say is you definitely want to go online and see what countries offer it. Like here in Morocco, I would have bought it like a year ago, honestly, but it's not available in Morocco, so I'm not able to use it. I think there are a lot of countries that you will be able to access it while you're traveling around, but just make sure you look up, is this available in the country you're wanting to go to? I think most of Africa doesn't have access to it. So if Africa is one of your top countries, it might not be a good solution for you. Another solution is having a little portable hotspot. There's different companies that offer these portable hotspots, and it's something that works a lot like your phone, but people have said that it can be a little bit more reliable than your phone. If you have an older phone or you're kind of more worried about using your phone, you could buy one of these portable hotspots that you can just kind of carry around with you. There are different companies that offer it. I used like Solace, or I bought one from Solace. I've never used it, but I did buy it just in case, just for peace of mind. And maybe one day I will use it, but I just haven't had to use it yet. One note about that is making sure that it is an international hotspot. There's a lot of hotspots like from Verizon or AT&T that you can buy, but those are ones that you're not going to want to buy, especially if you're traveling internationally. Like if you are, just traveling in the US, that's fine. But if you're going to travel internationally, you want to make sure there's one that has an international plan. And lastly, my number one go-to backup is my phone. Because funny enough, other countries actually have really great mobile internet services. I was just looking it up before starting this video, and it's interesting that the United States, they are ranked lower when it comes to like mobile internet speeds. They obviously have kind of faster Wi-Fi speeds, but their mobile speeds are lower. And when I was in the States, I would have never really considered using my internet on my phone because I wouldn't say my internet was like terribly good or terribly reliable, but any country I've been in, my phone as a hotspot has been an incredible backup. I've never had issues, and honestly, I get faster Wi-Fi on my phone than I do with the Wi-Fi from the router. The only thing with that is that depending on your plan, if it's not unlimited, it does eat up a lot of the Wi-Fi. If you have like a certain amount of gigabytes per month or per certain time frame, you might not want to use it as much because it could eat it up really fast. But if you have unlimited, like when I was in Thailand, I had an unlimited and I was staying in a place, I was kind of like a hotel and it didn't have very good Wi-Fi. I used my phone and it was perfect. And here in this small village that I'm living in, I use it sometimes as a backup and it works better than the Wi-Fi that I have. Whew. Okay, that is all, you guys. That is all of my wisdom. Well, maybe not all of it, but definitely the main things that I have done that have really helped me with working online in my business. And I hope that they help you too. And if you're someone who also has used Wi-Fi a lot for your work and have some other tips and tricks, please share them in the comments. I'd love to learn, and I'm sure whoever else is watching this video would love to learn. And other than that, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.